What's that for you? But it's not allowed to set aside. No, sorry about all these out to the other because it's similar to it's weights and measures, using weights and measures and making transactions. So you're not allowed to split up an animal and say, I have $5 worth of this animal, you have $10 worth of this animal. That's called nimnin. Obviously, it's not about a pace, it's about any animal. You can't do a nishni and yontif. Have nimnin lo me'erev yontif. You do it from erev yontif, v'shochtin, and then to spread a shecht and mechalki b'neim, and divide up divide up the meat ad yontif. Rabbi Yerushalmi Beitza shokol adam basa keneged akeli or keneged akupit. Rabbi Yerushalmi says, now let's actually weigh meat on yontif in a normal fashion, but you can weigh portions in a scale and put on the other side, instead of a standard weight or measure, a vessel, or a kupitz, a cleaver. So now let's use the scales altogether. Even if you use something other than a weight on the other side, you're still not allowed to use a scale, period, at all. Okay. Just either portion before Yotif, or they have to actually decide for Yotif. But even on Yotif, they could just cut. You couldn't actually wait. And it says more halos even mosifin. Now this is the Gemara says. The Gemara tries to learn that what it says actually does learn. That chila means you can't make the initial division of the animal on Yontif, but if you want to add people and the carbonated adds and not mention how much value they'll have in the animal, to say, well, we had 5 people before you have to begin, now let's add a couple of other people who have 10, right? There's far more people who have 10. That's okay, so again, as long as you don't mention sums. Tani lo yomar adam l'chavero. A British guy said to his friend, I want to have a seller's worth of this animal. I want to have a shekel worth of this animal. But he can say, I want to have a third, a half, a third, or a quarter. You can measure fractions. You can't mention actual values. Rabbi Chia Rabban, Rabbi Shimon Rebbe, Rabbi Chia the Great, and Rabbi Shimon the son of Rebbe, who were contemporaries, Shoklu Mana Keneged Mana. They used to use the scale to weigh a portion opposite a portion. Now, that's again not opposite a weight and not opposite a vessel, but that's only the B'chor, and that's only by that's by B'chor where you're not allowed to weigh and measure. But by Medvar more in B'chol, that's only on a weekday. But Yontif Aser, but Yontif you're not even allowed to do that. You're not even to weigh one corresponding to the other. Okay, by B'chor on a weekday, so you're allowed, although you're not allowed to use weights and measures to divide up a B'chor Balmum, but you're allowed to divide up the meat by weighing piece opposite piece, but only on a weekday. On Yontif, one is not allowed even to do that. One can't use a scale at all. Now it's interesting, the Bavli here is matir this. The Bavli says you can weigh portion opposite portion on Yontif. It's interesting because the Bavli's make on this, but it's going to be machmir and something immediately on the base, and the psukim seem inconsistent. We'll see in a minute. For Shem Mashkin little Kab 9 plus 9 Kolikar, the reason why I can only do this on weekday and on Yontif is because you can't use a scale. So Rabbi Avun, Rabbi Yehuda B'Shem Shmuel said, even if you want to hang a piece of meat in a scale, not because you want to weigh it, but you want to save it from the rats, from the mice in the house, it's still also to do. Says Martin, no. Rabbi Yosef said, no, I don't know that. Now, that's not the logic. Now, what's he addressing? He's addressing our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said the language, right? Can't use the scale at all. So it sounds like can't use the scale even to hang meat to save it from the mice. So it says Gemara, no, the Tana is addressing the third Tana who doesn't appear in our Mishnah. And the way to read our Mishnah is follows. So begin the tzina, Rabbi Yerushalmi shokol adam basar keneged kaklio keneged kupit. It says, Rabbi Yerushalmi says the person can weigh meat opposite a vessel or opposite a cleaver. The Chachamim say you can't use the scale at all. It must be that they're shadow boxing, so to speak, a Tanu doesn't appear in our Mishnah. Hatanya Kadmayo, the Tanakama, who's not in the Mishnah, but there must be a Tanakama who they're both arguing on. Savar Meimar, who said Mashgichin, who said you can use the scale on Yontif. So in fact, the three Tanai in the Mishnah, one of which is invisible, and the other two which are visible to us. The visible Tana said you're allowed to use the scale on Yontif. The next Tana said no. Rabbi Huda said you can't use a scale with measures. You can use scales with a shinui, by using vessels in order to measure. The third Tana said a mashgichim kolikar, but he didn't mean to preclude the use of a scale altogether, even not to hang the meat in order to save it from a mouth. What he meant to say is you shouldn't use a scale to measure at all, but for any other purpose you can use a scale. So it's interesting. The holy ploto, the bekav was not minach barmuta to hang it in the scale because the mice is permissible. So it's here the bavli is machmir. That's why there's little aleph at the beginning of the page by that halacha where it said osir. Yerushalmi is making. Yerushalmi says you're not allowed to weigh anything on Yontif, even meat opposite meat like we learned on Ralph, but you are allowed to use a scale to hang it up because of the mice. The Bible says the exact opposite, which doesn't seem to be as understandable as what the Yerushalmi says. The Bible says you're not allowed to weigh. You are allowed to weigh meat opposite meat, but you're not allowed to hang meat in a scale in order to prevent the mice from getting at it, which seems again backwards. Okay, I don't know what as far as the Bavli. We have to show when we get to Beitza and the Bavli, we'll find out.
Also goes against the bottom line.
That's right, you lose your meat to the mice. Says maybe they didn't care about mice so much. Now, this is a person after he took meat on Yontif, so he can't obviously weigh it, but he can check it out when he gets home, and to know whether he got the proper amount which he wanted to get. In other words, at the time of transaction, you're not allowed to weigh. But after the transaction is over, when he gets home, he can check it out to make sure he got the right amount. I doubt we pass in that way.
Against the weight and measure, or against another vessel?
I assume against another vessel, though it's not clear here. But I can't imagine possibly. There's no little letter here. Rabbi Mona as Zavan Charuvin the Shemitah. Now, Rabbi Mona bought Charuvin of Shemitah. They have Kedusha Shemitah, so you can't buy them in normal fashion. Also, so he asked, Shal Rabbi Chizkiah, so he came and asked Rabbi Chizkiah whether he can weigh them when he gets home, like Rosh Gamliel. Here it makes sense, right? Because this is not Yontif. On Yontif, it's difficult. Even in your own house, you shouldn't be allowed to do weights and measures. But perhaps Rosh Gamliel is only talking about Shemitah, right? Because Shemitah, the point is not to make the transaction, right? It's not as an Isser on Yontif to weigh things and measure things in and of themselves. But by Shemitah, the only Isser is to make a normal transaction on Shemitah fruit. So therefore, in this context, it does make sense to say that, as he said, the rabbis were accustomed, like Rosh Gamliel, to actually weigh stuff when they got home. So of course, by Shemitah fruit, that makes far more sense, right? Says the Gemara, Tani, we learned that tabach lo yeshoko biyodo. The interesting thing, a butcher cannot put something in his hand and a weight in the other hand, because he knows how to do it. He knows how to estimate. That's his profession, right? Shiyado kalitray. His hand is like a weight. He can cut with a knife, even though he knows precisely how much he's cutting. But that's not, doesn't look like he's doing it precisely, and therefore, V'naisin says he can give out in that fashion. So that where it's not nicker that he's actually measuring, that's permissible. Tani, we learned in Magilin B'Yontif, one is not allowed to do there's a special way of skinning an animal. We've had this in the past, where you skin the animal from the feet, and in order to be able to make a goat skin out of it afterwards. So you leave everything whole, right? It's a very complex way of skinning it. Normally when you skin an animal, you rip it down the middle and then tear off the skin. But you want to make a goat skin out of it, so you have to do it very carefully and kind of like, remove the innards from the skin whole in order to be able to use it afterwards to store liquids or whatever you want to store in it. So you can't do it in Yontif. And lo b'chol b'chor, you can't do it on a weekday if it's a b'chor or a psula v'lo psula mukdashim or psula mukdashim l'kekdesh which got a mum, because it's not derech eretz, right? It's really, it's as if you raise the animal. The Gemara explains, then it looks like you raised the animal for the purpose of skinning it afterwards. In other words, that you did have, of course, you didn't do any avoided to it tangibly when it was alive, but it looks like you were cultivating it for that purpose. And it's forbidden to, of course, cultivate any psulim mukdashim b'chor for any purpose, not for shearings, not for to work, not for any purpose. And this looks like you're cultivating for a purpose, therefore they forbade it. Amrav Yusta Bar Shunam gazu aleim shel yirosam adorim. A different reason for the gzeira, because if we allow you to skin them in that fashion, so people might come to grow them for that. I guess it was very important to have good goat skins. So therefore we don't want you to come to that, and that's why they forbade it. Now this is an interesting word, and nobody's sure exactly what it means, but the truth is the Mashbiach explains, although I'm not sure if he explains it exactly the way I'm going to explain it, but I certainly was inspired by him. I mean, the way you skin something is one of the ways to skin is by actually blowing air in it, because the cells which cause the skin to adhere to the flesh will break, right? Right. If you blow air into it, they break apart. So since that's the case, so that's one way of skinning, especially if you want to make a goat skin, so to blow air into the hide. So it says the Gemara, everyone agrees that that's mutter. But what about if you want to break the skin off the body, off the carcass, by beating it by sticks? I guess that'll also do the trick and loosen it somehow. So it's Rabbi Chia, Rabbi Yerushalmi Beitza, Chanan are also one of the two said it's forbidden. Of course, it doesn't look like the right thing to do kachim. It's not psulim. We're talking about psulim mukdashim or about bechor. It's not proper, right? So Choran Amar Mutar said it's permissible. No, everybody agrees you can't beat it. Please, the question is whether you can sort of do the belt, blow the air into it. One said it's forbidden, the other said it's permissible. So machlokas is not about michbot, machlokas is about being minpuach, because even blowing air into the animal doesn't look nice. It starts getting all bloated up. Therefore, they were dafka matzah. Therefore, maybe it's also to do even that. Okay? One is not allowed to sharpen knives on Yom Tov. But you can pull them against each other. They go like this, and they sharpen. They it's not really sharpening so much as although it says it's sharpening b'shinui, but I think it's really more cleaning than sharpening. I'm not sure, but that's what the Gemara is going to say.
What about shechita knife?
Yeah, no, it has to be ready from before Yom Tov.
And if you don't have it,
tough. No, it's not. It's not. That's machshir yochel nefesh. We're not making on that. So, lo yom adam v'tabach b'shish not say to a butcher, m'charli b'dinar basar, sell me for a dinar meat. I will shochet vein m'chalki b'neim. What they can do is they can slaughter and divide him without mentioning a sum. It's like Rabbi Yehuda. Rav Yehuda b'Shem Shmuel. Well, actually, like Rabbi Yehuda, the immediate meaning would be that we thought that even Messiah Gabi Chaverta is Machshiri Elchol Nefesh, and ever shall be Mutzkor Rabbi Yehuda is Matir Machshiri Elchol Nefesh. So it says more no. Rabbi Yehuda b'Shmuel, Shem Shmuel Divrei Akoli. Everybody agrees that it's permissible. Why? It's Kedei Lahavish Shamrun Shalet. It's really not sharpening. It's really removing the fats which are adhering to the knife, and therefore everybody would be Matir this. Okay. It basically could say to a storekeeper, fill for me this vessel, but not if it's a vessel which has, it's like a graduated cylinder which has markings in it. If it's a keli which has a mida which has markers on it, you shouldn't fill it up on Yom Tov at all. Says the Gemara. Ma'itz b'Shmuel bar b'Shol ben Botni shem amalis midaysim erev Yom Tov. What a Shmuel bar B'Shol ben Botni did was he would fill up his measures from before Yom Tov and give them to his customers on Yom Tov. That's okay. B'Shol omer b'Moedas again on Yom Tov. It's not okay. Only on Chol Moed. No, 1 second. He said it was only on Chol Moed he used to do this, not on a weekday, not on Yom Tov. And the Carbon says here, The reason why he did it on Chol Moed is because he didn't have time during the day to actually measure out for each customer, because then he wouldn't have time to learn. So therefore he prepared from the night before on Chol Moed in order to do this, but not on Yontif itself. He wouldn't sell on Yontif out of a measured cylinder or out of a measured vessel. Chachamim said Shoba and Botnis did this even on weekdays. You measured out the night before. Why is that named Mitzu Yamidos? It's a very interesting reason. Because if you're pouring oil from one vessel to another, there's a lot of drippage. At the end, the stuff which drips out, so it takes a long time for everything to drip out. So he would leave the vessels pouring overnight in order to make sure that as much as possible would drip out, so he could give his customer a full measure. That was his Midas Chasidus. Okay? Ravuna Amar, Ravuna says you can use, according to Tanakama, who said you can use a graduated cylinder, right? It's just that you shouldn't use the gradations in it for marking, for measuring. So Ochasa, yes, so you can say give me a little bit more, a little bit less. In other words, don't pay attention to the mark. So they actually can use, say, a measuring cup on Shabbos Yontif, as long as you're not paying attention to the markings on the side. According to the next Tana, Rabbi Yehuda says you can't use a measuring cup at all on Shabbos Yontif, right? But Tanakama, you can use it, just don't pay attention. And Ravuna says, just say, put a little bit more, a little bit less.
So there's no Marasai issue here?
No, according to the Tanakama, there's not. I mean, according to Rabbi Yehuda, obviously there is, but that's the machlokas. Rabbi Lezer Amer, Lazira Bar Rechama. Rabbi Lezer said to Zira Bar Rechama, Mali Ayin Mona, fill me up this vessel. This is what he said in the Yontif. Fill me up this vessel. Tomorrow we'll measure it. So that way they knew, tomorrow we'll measure how much was in the vessel. The vessel itself was not a measuring vessel. But he said, fill it up for me today, and tomorrow we'll measure how much it was, so I'll know how much I have to pay you. Tani Maisa Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Tzadok, Rabbi Shol ben Botnis, Shayu Chanvani Yerushalmi, they were storekeepers in Yerushalayim. They used to fill the measures from before Yontif, and they gave them to their customers on Yontif. Rabbi China ben Akavi Omer, Abchol Hamoed they used to do it on Chol Hamoed. Here the Vilna Shas takes out the word. For some reason I missed this when I prepared. Abchol Hamoed also came. Even on Chol Hamoed they used to do this. And the Vilna Shas takes out Shamoy because it said in the Mishnah B'chol, right? It said even on a weekdays it's doing name Mitzvah Amidas in order to make sure that everybody got a proper measure, right? Not because of any Yontif issues. Okay? So Afu Konas Shlosh Milos Chavilas. Now the interesting thing is that Abba Shol ben Botnis got 300 vessels over time. 300 is usually an exaggeration, but he got a significant amount of vessels over time. And his friend, who was his partner, also got 300 measures. I assume it's Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Tzadok. One of wine and one of oil, I think. One was a wine dealer, one was an oil dealer. And they brought them to the Beis HaMikdash. In other words, to see what to do with them, because they reckoned that that's how much they cheated their customers. Now, of course, it wasn't that they cheated them, actually, right? Because these are the guys who the night before, right, would actually start pouring the oil, so it'd be fully poured out till morning. But there's the Midas Chasidus, that they brought a lot of jugs corresponding to what they think they might have potentially ripped off their customers. So it says more, so Chachamim said, Lo Yisem Tzrichim Lasos Kain. You didn't have to do this, right? It was beyond the measure. Since you were machmir by yourselves, Yatzabem Tzorchei Tzibor. We'll give them for Tzorchei Tzibor. Now here's a Gemara which we have several times in Shas. We have just recently in Shkolim. Pam Achas Chola. Once Abba Shol got sick, and he got sick with the arm with which he measured out the oil. Like Nakdimon, whatever, I think Nakdim Ben Gurion. Like he lost his daughter in a flood. He was the one who used to dig wells for the Oli Regalim. Like when Shkolim says his son or his daughter, I forget which one, fell into the well, right? One fell in the well and was saved, and one fell in the well and was drowned.
It couldn't be that it happened that way, because if he did
mitzvah with it. But then the Gemara changes his mind. Right, where it says, Kodesh Baruch Hu's medaktik chasidov, and that's what it says here as well. So he said, Asun Chamon, come and see Hado Yemina, that right hand which measured with justice, measured properly, it's the one which got sick. Why? Because anybody who says that Kodesh Baruch Hu forgoes or Averos, because somebody's very, very righteous, his innards will be foregone. He lets things go for a while, but eventually he collects his debts. Now, don't think it was such a big debt by Abishol. On Rabbi Yachal, it says Svivav Nisara Me'od. Those who are close to him are very stormy. Those who are close to him, we darshan medaktik imoin kachutasara. He's very meticulous to them on hairbreadth. So Abishol, of course, is a big tzaddik, right? But when he did something even minutely wrong, Kodesh Baruch Hu punished him with that arm, which was so righteous, right? Precisely because Mistama, he was the right hand, he was a righty. Whatever he did wrong, he also did with his right hand. So the great schus doesn't protect from punishment. And either rabbi, that's a good thing, right? Because the Kodesh Baruch Hu is medaktik with the people who are very righteous to make sure that they get punished for whatever minute sins they have in Olam Hazeh. Okay?
Nowadays they'd say this was an occupational hazard. Carpal tunnel syndrome.
That's right. You pull the muscle or something.
Nintendo finger.
Not from this pasuk, El from this pasuk, same idea. Benora calls Svivav. He's awesome on all those who surround him. Maroa Krovim Hashem's awe is placed more on those who are close to him, than those who are distant from him. Okay, aloha tes. A person could say to his friend, Tenli Beitza Megozim B'minyan. Even though it's yontif, he can say, give me a certain number of eggs and nuts. Shekain derech ba'abayis yosmona b'sok beis. So that's not considered to be uvta d'chol. It's not considered to be like mekach or because even at home, when you distribute things, nuts and eggs, you distribute them by number. Tani Omer Adam Chaver, a person could say to his friend, Tenli koleshel tavlin. Give me a measure of spice. Because that's the way you do it at home too. No, it's not a transaction. You put a teaspoonful of sugar in your tea, right? You're allowed to do that on Shabbos or Yom Tov. So too, if you're going next door to borrow or to acquire, as a gift or as a sale, you can say, give me a teaspoonful, because that's not a way to measure, which is generally used for transactions. It's generally used for cooking. Okay? Hajj perch ein tzaddik. Hamevi karei Beitza in the Yerushalmi is considerably easier than Beitza in the Bavli. Beitza in the Bavli is hard. It's a famous Masech, famous for saying, Beitza, you can cook it easy, you can cook it hard, but cook it soft, cook it hard. But Beitza is a hard cooked Masech. And Yerushalmi is so far Baruch Hashem. Hamevi karei mimakal amakum. Somebody brings jugs of wine from place to place. Lo yivim b'sal v'kupa. It's too pedestrian, too vachedek, to bring them in a sack or in a basket or in a container. Maybe you are kasefo, but you can bring them the jugs on your shoulder. There's a word missing here on the side. It brings down olafonov, or in front of you. If you're carrying straw or hay, then you can't put the bundle behind you. That looks vachadik. But you can carry it in your hand. One can begin using hay in a haystack ad yontif. One cannot initially begin to use wood, which is in a wood pile, because that's too much removed from usage. Muktzah was a place where they kept the wood for long-term use, not for immediate use, and therefore, if they're not right near your house, it's in the muktzah, you can't start using it yontif. It is muktzah. Mastisa be'elun kurpadio. I'm just telling you about certain jugs, the kikatos, small jugs, like wine bottles. The mitan and tarte tlas bego yodik. Take 2 or 3 in your hand. Hoisa achas gedol olefanav. However, it was one large container, so then you got a problem. With fun of kachi darko. If you carry it in front, that's the normal way of carrying it. Lacha you can back kachi darko. So there's no shinui. What are you going to do? So interesting halacha. I don't fully understand how this works. I guess console the Rabbanan, they can do whatever they want. But hechmatat omar mevial gabi just like we said yesterday, that if you have an animal you skin in the field, you can bring its skin, its hide back together with some meat adhering to the hide. So too the kavosim mevial gabi kankana. You put a few small. You take a large box. You put a few of the small bottles which are mutter to take, and this larger bottle, or larger container, which is also to take, and you carry them all together. So there's a large one which is also to take, because no matter which way you take it, it looks like you're schlepping in a weekday fashion. If you take in a box together with some of the small ones which are mutter to take, so then that's okay. Which is a very strange heter, but that's what we're saying.
It's like when we had a carrying a mace and you put a baby.
Yeah, it's like that, but I would not expect to see that by wine bottles. Because the here, it should make it worse. You're carrying more stuff. That's not a question of quantity. It's a question of what a mace is versus what a piece of bread is. But here we're saying carrying more makes it better. I'm just not sure why that works. All right, so in any event, so kamada, or an alternate possibility, kamada atamar mevin evarim. Just like it says, you could bring limb by limb an animal from the field when you slaughter it out in the field. You can pour out of the wine from the large container, bring it in small containers, literally in platefuls, but I mean small containers. Rabbi Yehuda asks, can one take straw out from Rishus Hayachid to Rishus Harabim on Yontif? Now, of course, Melacha is mutter tzarich ochel nefesh, right? So Gemara is going to ask what your shaila is. What are you asking about, right? So it says more of Lomas Nisa. You understand? This is not our Mishnah. It says Hamolichas Atevin. It says in our Mishnah, if you're taking straw, don't put the basket in front of you. Carry it in front of you. Be that as it may, the bottom line is you can carry the tevin, right? You're carrying the straw. So what's the problem? It says more, a very interesting thing. Mas Nisa command the mar l'chol nefesh af nafshus beim b'klal. The truth is, there's no reason to carry straw or hay unless you're going to use it for an animal. And our mission is going like the opinion which holds that for the purpose of an animal, you can carry stuff. You can do stuff on Yontif just as if it's a purpose for a human being. Chol nefesh, chol nefesh means not just nefesh adam, but also nefesh behema. Our shaila is matzrichole. What's our shaila? Command mar ein nafshos behema bichlal. Our shaila is, according to the opinion which holds that the nefesh of behema is not included in that which you can do malacha for. Can you carry the tevin from Rishus Harabim to Rishus Hayachid, or from Rishus Hayachid to Rishus Harabim for an animal? Nevertheless, right? So it says the Gemara a very interesting thing. Wait, let's see if the Gemara says time out. Baram kabandam ar nafshos behema bichlal pshita lemas nisa. Okay, so it sounds like, according to opinion, that nefesh includes nefesh behema. So it's pashut the Mishnah soibab motzi lahachil, that you're taking out in order to feed, and that's okay. So according to him, is there any question? He says, well, yes. Even according to opinion which shows nefesh behema is bichlal, the shayla has been motzi lahesik. You can ask the question two ways. If you're going according to opinion, nefesh behema is included in kol nefesh, so then the question is, can you take out tev in order to burn? It's not real fuel. Fuel is wood. Straw is not fuel. Shaylas, can you take it nevertheless out as fuel on Yontif? According to opinion that nefesh behema is bichlal, nefesh behema is not bichlal, then the shayla is, according to him, can you take it out nevertheless for an animal on Yontif? Now, I'm not sure exactly what the hava mean is that you can take it out. I really didn't think about it. I guess there must be a reason why we would. So the Carbonate says, since it's royal adam lishan olav, since it's suitable for a human being to sleep on it. So therefore, that's the question. According to being it's nefesh behema is eino bichlal, right? That an animal's needs are not part of ochel nefesh. So according to the Mishnah, can we even take it out for an animal in order to eat? Because really, you're not supposed to take stuff out for an animal, but maybe it's mutter because you could take it out for a human being to sleep on. Maybe it's for an animal to eat. It's also okay. According to Madam Rose, it's mutter to take out stuff for an animal to eat. So according to him, is what can you use to take it. That's partial for an animal. It's okay. The question is whether you could take it out for yourself to use as fuel, even though straw is not normally used as fuel under normal circumstances. Okay. Now the thing is that the Yerushalmi actually entertains the notion that nefesh behema bichlal, The Bavli does not. Bavli rejects the entire idea. Says there's no such thing. All nefesh means not even nefesh of a goy. You can't cook for a goy. Well, maybe an animal is better than a goy. For example, you own a goy you don't own. But you can't cook for a goy or an animal. It's only for a human being. Only for a Jewish person. Rabbi Yaakov Barach B'Shem Rabbi Yasu said, "Muksa shiyavash aser ligabo." This goes back to something which we talked about earlier in the Masechta. The Bavli holds this way. The Yerushalmi earlier did not hold this way. I'm sorry, the opposite. Yerushalmi holds this way. The Bavli does not. Rabbi Yaakov Barach B'Shem Rabbi Yasu said, "Muksa shiyavash." If you have, I think the Yerushalmi actually also. Maybe I can be in a second. This is something else. Muktzah shiavash v'lo yadabo. It's muktzah where it became dry. You weren't aware that it became dry. Never mind. That was at the beginning of Masechta. Just ignore what I said. So the question is like this: Muktzah a muktzah which was drying and became dry on Yontif, meaning that you put up raisins or dates to dry before or figs to dry before Yontif, and they dried. Now it's touched them. That's pashut, right? Everybody agrees about that. That's simple. Rabbi Yasser, the question is where they became dry before Yontif. He didn't know about it, and that is machlokas Bav and Yerushalmi. But when they became dry in Yontif, it's definitely usher. The problem is Rabbi Amar Rabbi Shimon Brei. Rabbi said to Rabbi Shimon his son, "Alei, go up to the roof where they used to dry the stuff. Va'aveilon grogros min aliyah, and bring us from the second floor grogros. Grogros are dried dates." Amar Lei, so he said, "Vein also mishum muktzah." Is it also because muktzah they were drying or at the beginning of Shabbos, beginning of Yontif, whatever, so they became rain also for the entire day. Amar Lei, so Rabbi said to the son, "V'adayin at luzu, you still hold that way? Come on." Only grapes and figs are muktzah when they're drying. Why is that? Because they're inedible between the time they're fresh and the time they're dry. Anything else is edible in between. So therefore, Rebbe said, I'm telling you to get dates. Dates are okay, because they never become inedible in the process of drying. It's only figs and grapes which do. Okay? Rabbi Zira said in front of Rabbi Yasa, let me stop, bro. It doesn't make sense to say this except Elon puts laya avulta. So about dates which are poor dates, and you actually cannot they've eaten, but they're not so good when they're fresh. So that's why you dry them. So I guess those are the specific type of dates that, as they're going along, they're semi-edible at least, and therefore you're allowed to take them even if they weren't fully dry at the beginning of Shabbos. So it says, Amar Lacey said, Af ona savar kain. Yeah, I agree with that. Asar b'yesi brave. Asar b'yesi brave. It's a basic Shem Rabbi Yochanan said, same thing, B'ilin puts laya avamai udus, this type of dates. Amar Lei, so he said, no. Ein l'cha, this time, whoever it was told over to said, Ein l'cha osim shum muktzeh el teinim b'anovi b'vad, doesn't matter what kind of dates. The only thing which become muktzeh are figs and grapes, which become completely repugnant in the middle of the process. Rabbi Yaakov Bar Savdi Shimri Avo said, Hodat Omerlin in Shabbos. That's all in terms of Shabbos. That it's that in the middle of the process, it's still edible, and therefore you can take it even if it wasn't fully dry at the beginning of Shabbos. I will eat a meiser preter meiser. Called variation muktzah. Everything is considered muktzah, meaning that it's not considered to be nigmar melachto, that you must take off meiser before you eat it, until actually it's fully dry. But if you go up and snack from the stuff in the muktzah, you don't have to take meiser off of it. Even though it was edible beforehand, even stuff which is edible, and does not become repugnant in the course of it drying. Since it is not fully completed yet, in terms of meiser, you're still allowed to snack. Rabbi Yosef said, Masisa Amar Kain, we have a Mishnah which indicates this. It says, Begroigros mishiyadush. By dates, the only thing to take a meiser is when you press them after they're, of course, dry. Over Megura mishiyagil. Megura is also some type of dates when you make a cake out of them. I guess some of them will be pressed and some you make a cake. It's the same idea. Okay, let's go a few more minutes. If you have a hut, you want to break down the hut and use the wood for fire on Yontif, you can't do that. You can take from next to the hut. You can bring wood from the field. If it's in a pile. Karpa from a yard, which is more prepared than a field. Even if the wood is scattered in the karpaf. Ezu karpaf, what is this yard we're talking about? Koshu samachlir, anything which is near the city, as opposed to the field which is far away. Div Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, no, it has to be, even if it's far away from the city. Koshu Batachas, it's anything where you need a key in order to get in, because it's normally locked. I feel Tchum Shabbos, even if it's 2,000 amos away, as long as, of course, it's not beyond Tchum Shabbos, you can't go b'chutz to Tchum, even on Yontif. That's, of course, from the Mishnah. Shmuel Amar B'Shaloni Skavin Lavosa. That's only if the wood next to the sukkah is not meant to thicken the sukkah, to thicken the walls. Skavin Lavosa, but if you meant to put wood there to thicken the walls, it's also B'Shlo Hitna, unless you made a condition. Avo Im Hitna, if you said, I'm putting it to thicken the walls, but I want to take it as firewood on Yontif, then Mutter, then you're allowed to take that wood on Yontif. Rav Nachman Bar Yaakov's boy, yeah, so I don't understand. What could the Tanai do? If Masnil, store a link, can one make a Tanai to break down houses on Yontif? In other words, he's making a Tanai to take down a house. There's no head to take down a house. So here's a change in gear. So the next five words are messed up. As the Ravid has a girsa, Gillian Ephraim brings it down. It should be Amri b'Shem Shmuel b'Noifel. They said in the name of Shmuel instead of b'Tofel. Said that they said in the name of Shmuel that's so about a case where the hut is already falling down, or it's partially broken down, and that's why you continue taking wood out off of it. Right? That's why the Tanai works. Okay, not b'Tofel but b'Noifel. It's already falling. So it's more of Rav Nachman Havi Ba. Rav Nachman still Rav Nachman Yaakov Havi Ba. He still asked his kasha because he said, "So manavshach, either it's fallen, in which case you don't need it tonight because it's already firewood, or it's not fallen yet, in which case what does the tonight do? What good is the tonight good? What good does the tonight do? Right? It's still part and parcel, albeit a falling hut, but it's not yet fallen. So no matter what, he refused to accept the possibility that a Tanai is of any validity here. Tanya Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon Lonachlu Beisham Yisrael Shemivin Eitzim Nam B'Chunatzim Shebasodeh Beisham Yisrael, who don't appear in our Mishnah, but I guess in the Brayso obviously they appear. I mean that's what we're saying right here. Lonachlu Beisham Yisrael Shemivin Eitzim Nam Chosim B'Chunatzim Shebasodeh. You can bring wood from when it's gathered into a pile in the field. I mean if it's done Shulkarfi, if it's scattered in a yard. Aman Echlaku, which is our Mishnah. Aman Echlaku was a Machlokas Amufuzorim Shebasodeh. What if it's scattered on the field? Sheba'ishamai Osim, Yishamai says also to bring it. Uvesil Matirim, unlike our Mishnah Asus, Beisil and Matir. Our Rabbi Osim, Moedi Beishamai, Beishamai concedes to Beisil, Shemavim, Eitzimina, Mechunasim Shebasodeh. You can bring wood if it's in a pile in the field, Mechunasim Shebagarpav, or if it's a pile in the yard. But you need a pile. Aman Echlaku, what's their machlokas? Alam B'Vozorim Shebagarpav, if it's scattered in the karpav. Shebeshamer Osrim, Beshamer says Osir, Beisil Meitzil Batzir, Beisil says Mutter. Rabbi Yetz, B'Shem Rabbi Yirmi, Rabbi Chana, and Rabbi Chanina, Mati Ba B'Shem Rav, he said the name of Rav, Halog Divrei Mishu Machmir. Yeah, the halog is like the Machmir, and we revive Minam V'Chusoyim Karpaf, and therefore, literally that means, and only the Mufuzayim Karpaf, but here means it excludes. In other words, our Mishnah allowed you to take wood which is scattered if it's scattered in a karpaf. We are machmir on that. We're machmir, they need both. Has to be in a karpaf, and it also has to be piled together. Okay? If it's scattered, it's simply not considered to be designated as firewood, and therefore you can't take it on Yontif. Mechavish Yitasi Rabbi Yehuda, so I have a contradiction Rabbi Yehuda. The Tzina Tzamon, there Rabbi Yehuda said, Rabbi Yehuda said, if you have a karpaf, no matter how distant from the city it is, if it has a well or some other form of water in it, you can carry within it. It's considered to be a karpaf, which is mukaf ladira, which is considered to be part and part a dwelling place, and you can carry in it. Here he says that's to be right next to the city. Or Ramana base dira avile Rabbi Yehuda. So Ramana said there are two different halachas here. One is vis-a-vis tiltul, and one is vis-a-vis muktzah. To carry in it, vis-a-vis hilchos erevin, it's got to be a karpaf which is enclosed for the purpose of dira. That doesn't matter how far away it is, as long as it's got water in it. It's considered to be per dira. So that the wood in it should be considered to be designated vis-a-vis purposes of muktzah. That means it has to be close to the city, because that means that you intend to go there on Yontif and take the wood. So that's the distinction between the two types of karpefos. Don't turn the page because we're finished for tonight.